Hello, friends. Today's topic is going to be one that you're really going to be interested in. It's called Busting the Stereotypes of Aging Seniors. This is something we've all had a big interest in. The biggest thing is that there are tons of myths, and then there are the realities. And Moose and I are going to bust these myths for you. But first of all, I want to tell you a story. It's something that I read a year or two ago when I was starting to do a little bit of research on all this. And it was a story about a young medical student who was in probably his second or third year of med school, and he was specializing in, I always want to say genealogy, but it's gerontology, which is the study of older people. And one of the exercises one day, and this was told in his words, was to write down or sketch your impression of what older people might look like. So the whole class took about 20 minutes to try and draw some sketches. Obviously, some were better than others. And when the time was up, they shared sketches. And almost all of the sketches were of people bent over, trying to walk with canes, people in wheelchairs, people lying back in their beds all day long, some faces with all kinds of lines, but all the faces had downturned lips. In other words, nobody was happy, and this situation was the end of the world. This young fellow was absolutely shocked because his drawing was the only one which showed his grandma leaping in the air, singing, playing with kids, and full of fun and vitality. Now, the exercise was interesting. The professor explained that number one, we are conditioned. And that's the whole root of stereotypes. In fact, I'm going to read you, I do have notes that I want to be accurate about these because a lot of this comes from research I've done on the internet. And the stereotype, you are conditioned, or everyone else is conditioned to think that old age is just something you just don't want to do. And the elderly generation is very affected by this. We're going to get into the media and how the media affects this. The magazine and newspaper advertising, television advertising, how do they depict older people? Not in a great light a lot of the time. It's getting a little better. Now I've got my glasses on for this because I want to read the definition of stereotyping. Stereotyping is believing that all people of a certain age or of a particular characteristic are the same. And that myth is busted because we are not all the same. There are so many factors that go into this that you just couldn't say because you've seen people who are in their 80s. Moose and I are 83. Moose will be 84 in 2 months. I can't believe it. So at this point, there's so many things we want to discuss here. I want to get into genetics a little bit, just a little bit, because I'm not a chemist, I'm not a biologist, I'm a school teacher. But what I've read and tried to understand is very interesting about what you inherit from your mom, what you inherit from your dad, and how certain genes affect your aging. And there's another factor called nature, nurture. Nature is what you might inherit, and nurture is the environment and your lifestyle. And guess what? It can be modified and changed. Genetics is only a small part of what you might be as you age. So it's a really, really interesting factor. But Moose and I, as I call my cameo boy in, are really going to do kind of a fun thing about myth and realities. And we have 10 of them that we're going to bust or debunk. So let me get my Moosey boy. Here's my cameo boy.
Getting ready for you know what.
And
believe it or not, the first spring training game is tomorrow, Sunday, whatever the date is, 29th or something.
that's right.
So anyway, that's why I'm wearing my hat.
And a couple of years ago, we were out there in Arizona.
Yeah.
For twice, 2 years in a row, we went out for that. We spent a week out there. We stopped in Palm Desert.
Yep.
It was great.
Yep.
It was great. Not this year, COVID. Now, I must tell you that the last time you saw Moose, he had the most gorgeous nails. And everybody remarked on what a good sport he was, how beautiful they were. And one lady even couldn't wait.
They're not beautiful anymore.
I thought he was going to leave them on, but guess what? He left them on for all those days until just now. I saw him rooting in my nail box for polish remover. He did it all by himself.
You say I'm busted.
You're busted. That's right. You're busted. So we have a paper here, and we're going to read from this about myth and reality, which has everything to do with stereotyping of older aged people. And you might be surprised at some of these. So, Moosey's going to read the myth, and I'm going to read the reality, or the bust. Ready? Go for it.
All older people are the same.
Busted. Actually, there's more variety among them, among all of us. More variety. Personality comes into it, so many factors. So we are not the same. Number 2.
Basic human needs are different in all other adults.
Older, right.
That's what I said, other.
Actually, human needs do not change. They're the same in all human beings.
Yeah.
Busted.
Okay. Here's one. 50%, it's either you or me,
That's true.
50% or more are senile.
Come on, let's say that one together because this is a strong one. Ready?
Busted.
80% of older adults are healthy enough to carry out their normal activities. And actually, dementia in older adults is a very small part of the overall population. And there are degrees of dementia, as we all know. For instance, Moose and I sometimes have trouble remembering a friend that we knew 3 weeks ago. Those are normal forgetful activities. And I know a lot of you worry about that, but don't worry, because forgetting things like that really doesn't enter into the problem at all. However, we do know that a lot of our friends and families do suffer or have some signs of some form of dementia, and that can be taken care of. Of course, you would go to your doctor if you suspect something like that. So, we are on number 4.
Most are incompetent.
Well, guess what?
Busted.
Physical disabilities are very often mistaken for intellectual abilities. All right? And there's a research done that older adults in the workplace who are still working in their late 60s and 70s, and some even in their early 80s. I was still substituting in school when I was 81 years old. So
Does this mean that the fact that I go around with a rollator doesn't mean that I'm intellectually lousy?
you are intellectually fine.
Oh, good.
Physically, you could be a little bit better.
I could be finer.
You could be better, but it doesn't mean that if you have physical disabilities, you're not competent, for heaven's sakes.
Non-compass mentis.
Right.
That was an old one.
Let me discuss
I was
something.
reading number 5, but
I know. I don't want to go to 5 yet.
Okay.
There's some research that older people who still keep working and are there in wherever sort of a job you might be doing.
Yeah.
The younger generation in that particular business say, oh, he's old, he's not competent, he gets stuff mixed up or whatever. Well, guess what? The research shows that the older adults in their positions are more skilled, are producing better than the younger people. So those of you who are still in the workplace, good for you. Do not think any less of yourself, because actually you're up here. Okay, here we go.
May I give an example of me?
Yes, you may.
You don't know what I'm going to say, do you?
No, I don't. Here we
When I
go.
was in my 70s, I was putting together a multi-million-dollar proposal to the Department of Energy. I was in my 70s. It was hard. It was high tech.
But he did it. Okay.
All older adults have rigid thinking.
Busted.
Let's harmonize that.
Busted.
Older adults' ability to learn new things stops.
No way. Busted. The capacity to learn in your 70s, your 80s, and onward is retained. However, sometimes there is a difference in speed of learning, and also learning patterns may change. But young people learn. Being a teacher, there's many ways that different people learn. Some have to read things aloud, some have to write things down. So older adults have their own ways of learning. However, they do not lose it. And one example is Grandma Moses. She started painting because she, I guess, had lost her spouse and was bored, and she was a great gardener and everything. But she wanted to do something different. And she started painting when she was 80 years old. And one day she went down to the local drugstore. This was the late 1800s, I guess. She went down to the local drugstore and put some of her paintings, primitive type paintings, in a drugstore up on a wall, and people loved them and started buying them, and this started it. She painted until she was 101 years old. What do you think of that? Okay, so that's that one. Okay, we on number 8.
It's easier to remember new things than recall from the post. Past.
Okay, now you can tell us about that from your own experiences.
Oh, I'm writing essays and anecdotes about things I did when I was 10 years old. And I remember the guy's name who was teaching me how to birdwatch. And I knew the girl he married.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Now I have to say that when we're on long rides and when we're out in the car, Moosey goes on and on and on about stories from the past. He remembers everything. Actually, I do too. And I'm sure most of you do too. Present things, sometimes...
I don't remember being in the car with you.
Anyway, it's a bust on that one too. We do tend to remember things from the past much better than we do in present times. Okay, next.
Most or many develop some form of dementia.
Well, we already discussed that, except I'm going to give you a real percentage here. Only 6 to 8% between the ages of 65 and 75 have some form. However, as you increase in age, it does get a little bit higher, but still only 1/3 over 85 have some form. And that doesn't mean that your mind is totally gone. It's just some form of forgetfulness here and there. And in the medical field, they know more about that, obviously. And here we go with number 10.
Most are depressed.
No. Now, depression is an illness, and you can't describe it as a personality track. Now, this is really funny. Guess what age most people are depressed at?
12.
40. It's that old change of life type thing, especially with men. Not necessarily women, but that's the age that most people are depressed. So it's another busted. Now there are other myths. We're not going to go into them. I'm just going to name them, and you might enjoy these. Sex and libido. Guess what, young people? Everybody thinks that when you get to a certain age, it's over. It's not. Research shows that it goes on. People have libido well into their 80s and 90s. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Loneliness. Loneliness depends on your lifestyle. Right now, a lot of people are lonely, and we can't do too much about that with COVID, but things are getting better. And even people who live alone can get out into the community. A huge amount of seniors, aging seniors in their 70s and even 80s, volunteer. I think it was like 25% of people over 65 volunteer in some form somewhere, which helps get rid of your loneliness. Another one is people tend to think that people over 65 are more religious. That's not necessarily so. It might be, but it's not due to it. It is due to the fact that when we were growing up and as younger people were more religious on the whole. Families and parents, they went to church more often, believe it or not, research has showed, than people do now, which is kind of a shame. So that depends on your religiosity, we'll say, on your upbringing. If you were religious, then more often than not, you'll be religious now. Okay. Adaptability, we've discussed that. We are very adaptable. We can learn new things. I myself have learned so much, probably more since my 60s than at any other time. Less creative when we know that's a bust too. Sickness. Most old people are sick. Well, you know what? There are a lot of things that happen to adults as they get older. However, because of modern science and doctor visits and how people take care of themselves, we live longer now than we did then. So that's that. There are some really interesting facts about, I love some of the things we can do to bust these stereotypes on our own. And we're going to get to those in a minute. I think Moose might want to go. I'm getting some nudges in the back here.
There's a rugby game on over there.
Okay. All right. Well, if you want to say goodbye to our friends right now, please do.
Goodbye.
This is interesting. This is about genetics and what we inherit from our mother and what we inherit from our father. First of all, as girls inherit 2 X chromosomes, whereas a baby boy would inherit 1 Y and 1 X. Don't ask me any more about that because I don't understand it. In genetics, nature and nurture. Nature does not trump nurture, which means genetics is not the overall factor. The environment and the lifestyle, which is the nurture, has a lot to do with it. Now, from your mom, you would inherit maybe hair color and the texture of your hair, your temper. And that's right. I inherited a very good temperament from my mother. Happy all the time. I do not have a temper. Eating habits. It's another thing I did inherit from my mother. I remember walking through the stores when we would food shop, and we'd always split a jar of pickles or a jar of herring or something before we got out. Now, we did always pay for it, but it was always gone by the time we got out. And to this day, I still eat herring almost every morning, and I love pickles of any kind. Dominant hand. Now, I'm left-handed, and both my parents were right-handed. However, our daughter, Colleen, is left-handed, and she inherited that from me. Interesting. Now, if you get migraines, you would inherit that from your mother, not your father. and your intelligence comes from your mother. So, as you know, we as human beings have 46 chromosomes, and we get 23 from each, from your dad and from your mom. From your dad, you would inherit your height, your dental health. My dad did have good teeth. Dimples. I don't think I have any dimples. I don't think he did either. But he did have these pretty little lips. I think the points here, I might have those. Your toes and your fingerprints. Now your hands. I did inherit my wrinkly old hands from my dad. It's okay though. And there's certain things that you can do as you get into the golden years. Stay happy, take chances, watch your diet, watch your exercise, your stress level. Remember, there's certain things we can control. Don't worry about those things. Get a good attitude adjustment. And the last thing, use your brain. The old use it or lose it thing. So I hope you learned something from this. What I learned more than anything is your lifestyle and your environment will trump your genetics. That just because your genetics were not great doesn't mean that you won't live to a ripe old age. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Moose and I did. Every once in a while we need a good informative video. That's really what we're all about. We're here to help you be happy, to look forward to aging, and to totally enjoy your golden years. So if you like this video and you're enjoying our other videos, for those of you who have not yet subscribed, come on, join our little family. We have a lot of fun besides learning a lot of new things. Until our next video, goodbye for now. God bless us all.